Oh, lads. Introducing alchemy, huh? Alright, first up, let me just say, this is the best thing that's happened to Arena in the entire time I've played it. If you disagree, you are a fool. Honestly, a fool. The absolute worst thing about Magic is that if a card is too good, it goes through two phases. The first phase is it ruins the format, so it makes every game that you play shit. And then the second phase is it just gets completely removed and it might as well have never existed after it gets banned, right? It just goes out off into the ether and it dies. So, what is a better solution to that? I don't know, how about you take the very good card? How about you take the too good card and then you make it a little bit less good? And then people who like it can play it. And people who don't like it don't have to have their games ruined? Wow, sounds good, right? So then you wonder, what type of weirdo would not like that? And it turns out a lot of people. I don't really understand why. Is there any alchemy haters in the chat that can tell me a reasonable reason as to why it's not a good idea? Other than, like, get off my lawn. I know that my living room has been, my living room walls have been painted green for the last 30 years, and I probably should change the colour, but no, I hate change. For absolutely no, like, real reason. Maybe because of the make it a little bit less good part. Yeah, but you don't... Okay. Do you think a reason to not like alchemy is that a person may enjoy playing with, like, very good cards? Okay, that's reasonable. But what how good a card is relative to the format, huh? It's relative to how good every other card is. You know? So Epiphany is very good in Standard, but it's very bad in Legacy. Because it depends what the rest of the cards available are. So, basically, almost any card can be good. It just depends on what the other cards in the format are. So if you have a good card like Alrund's Epiphany, nerfing it does not mean that there's less good cards. You know, if you bring it in line with some other cards that are like a tier below, then you could actually end up in a situation where there's more good cards, right? Because right now, the only good cards in Standard to discuss this, we're going to have to, you know, make some shortcuts. But say the only good cards in Standard are Chariot, Epiphany, Goldspan, Thalia, right? Now, obviously that's not true, but it makes it easier to talk about it. You nerf those cards. As long as you don't nerf them too far, which will happen sometimes, right? Sometimes the nerfs will take them from tier 1 cards way below the tier 2 cards and down into the trash can, right? Which is something you actually want to avoid. But they'll get that wrong sometimes, but hopefully they'll get it right a lot. You just put them in line with the next tier of cards, then you actually end up in a situation where there's more good cards rather than less, right? I don't see the problem, man. In an ideal world, every single card that's printed in Magic would be exactly the same power level, right? In an ideal world. That's not, obviously that is impossible. Or not impossible, but so unlikely that it's pointless even discussing it. So all you can do is take the cards, put them into piles of good, okay, and shit, and try and get a situation where there's as many cards as possible in the good pile. So there's only once the cards are printed, when the cards get printed, it is just impossible for all 250 cards in a set to be in the good pile. It's not going to happen, and if you expect that to ever happen, you're insane. So all you can do is print them, put them in the piles, and then adjust the cards that are not in the correct pile by making them a little bit better or a little bit worse. I don't know, guys. Like, alchemy is... I might have to drop the word, you know? I might have to drop the word. It is a strictly better standard. It is absolutely all upside. So these are the rebalanced cards. Bear in mind there's also going to be like 60 or so new cards. Of which I will be revealing 12 on Monday. Alchemy is going to be basically standard, but you're going to have some cards that are nerfed. You're going to have some cards that are buffed. And you're going to have some new, like, arena-only cards that will be using mechanics that are not possible to use in paper. So we've seen cards like that already in Historic. For example, you've got the Lookout Elf, huh? 2 mana, 1/1, seek an elf. So you're gonna have like 60 new cards for standard, or for alchemy, that are using digital only mechanics, basically. So Epiphany, in standard, you've got the normal Epiphany, and then alchemy, you're gonna have this one. So still 7 mana. The foretell cost will be 7 rather than 6, and you only make the birds if you cast it from foretell. So top decking an Epiphany will not make birds. So Galvanic Iteration will not make birds off of the copied the copy, even if their first copy is cast from foretell. So if you do Iteration, Foretold Epiphany, you will get 2 extra turns, but you will only get 2 birds, not 4. So that just basically kills their deck, right? Because they can't... The only reason that deck is good is because the birds are like just enough of a clock to actually win. But if you're not getting the birds anymore, the deck is dead, right? Which is good. Goldspan Dragon is pretty much the same, except you do not get a treasure when it's targeted by a spell anymore. So if you if you remove opponent's Goldspan Dragon, they ain't getting a treasure this time, which is good. Seeker's Chariot, again in standard, you'll continue to play the original. In alchemy, you'll play this version, where you make 1 cat, 1 2/2 instead of 2 2/2s, but it's crew 2 instead of crew 4, which again I think is a good nerf, because now Prismari Command, for example, will clear the entire card now, right? Whereas Prismari Command, which was already a good one of your good answers to Chariot, they still got left with a 2/2, but now Prismari Command is killing the only cat and the vehicle as well. Luminarch Aspirant, so this is your original version that you'll continue to use in standard. This is your alchemy version and historic version here. The beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So that is not as much of a nerf as people think it is. That is a great nerf, in my opinion. Because getting the counter in combat is not always good. The standard version is better in creature mirrors, and the rebalanced version is actually a lot better against Gandalfs. Because a lot of the time having to play this aspirant pre-combat against a deck like Izzet is like costing you significantly. Because you're giving your opponent a lot of information before combat, but you have to play it, right? You have to try and get this counter. So being able to play it like in the second main phase makes a big difference. So this new version will actually be better in some matchups. It'll be worse in more, because there's more creature mirrors than there is games against Gandalf, but overall it's definitely a bit of a nerf, but it's absolutely still a playable card. Faceless Haven. So it's basically the same, but now you've got it's a 3/3 instead of a 4/4. Still 3 mana to activate, still Vigilance, still all creature types. So this is an enormous nerf. Haven's still good. You're still gonna play it, of course. In your monocolor snow decks. Of course you will still play it. Because it's there's no alternative, right? You just have to play this. But it is a big nerf. This is the only actual broken card, and that's why its nerf is Omnath has been nerfed significantly more than these other cards have. You now only get to scry 1 instead of drawing, and it's 1 more mana to cast. Omnath would still be in standard if it wasn't banned there. Crazy, isn't it? I don't know if you can justify Omnath anymore. It feels like too heavy of a nerf, but I'm not really sure what they were supposed to do, to be honest. I don't know what the alternative is, because they've obviously nerfed 2 parts of the card here, but if they just nerfed 1 of these 2 parts, I think it would still be too good. So they kind of have to do 2 things, but the problem is that doing 2 things has essentially made it unplayable. So it seems like Omnath is just a problem that can't be fixed, and that's okay. Cosmos Elixir. So these are the buffs. So they said that their choices, like, so bear in mind, this is just like this is their first iteration of the nerfs and buffs, huh? So of course over time there's going to be a lot more than this, but they're just testing the waters right now, huh? So they said that the cards that they wanted to choose to buff were ones that people have been playing with, even while knowing that they suck, huh? So just cards that people really like and would enjoy having them being a bit better. And that seems like a fair way to choose what cards are buffed. You've got to choose somehow, right? You've got to make some choice. So Cosmos Elixir now gives you a scry 1, which is a big buff. You change your Pridemate into a Trelasara, and suddenly it's a very good card, huh? Don't underestimate scry 1 in a deck archetype that can't draw any cards. Alright, Druid class. So Druid class is 3 mana to get your Beanstalk Giant instead of 5, which is, I mean, that's 2 mana less is like a huge change. But that wasn't really the problem with Druid class, I don't think. The problem with Druid class is this initial 2 mana. I think a better rebalanced Druid class would be like 1 mana to cast, 2 mana for level 2, and keep the 5 mana for level 3. Because your problem is that you can't go to level 2 until turn 3, and then you're playing a 4th land after upping this, and you just can't. You're not playing the game until turn 4, and even then on turn 4 you've still only got a maximum of 6 lands. So you're casting, like, you're giving up turn 1, 2, and 3, so that on turn 4 you can play a 6 mana card, and 6 mana cards don't win the game. So that Druid class is just scuffed, man. Then we have Wizard class. So this one is real spicy. So level 3 now costs 3 rather than 5. So it's still 1 mana, do nothing. Then you get to do a divination. But I mean, level 3 is no joke, guys. Level 3 is no joke. I still have a concern about Wizard class in that it's still 7 mana total to get to level 3. So you're still going to want to play this in some sort of grindy deck. But do you have enough creatures in your grindy deck once you've added your lands and your draw spells so that you can draw and make counters, and your wizard classes and your creatures? Like, still not too sure how this fits in any deck, but isn't this the same problem as Druid class? Well, not really, because you can't change the cost of the first 2 levels, man. You can't you can't make this 2 mana draw 2. This like broken, innit? Level 3 is the only one that you can change on this card. Phylath World Sculptor is a 5/5 elemental with trample. So you still get your tokens, but now your tokens still get buffed by +4/+4, but they now get trample until end of turn. Which is not an enormous buff, but I don't think this card needed an enormous buff. It wasn't too far off being a nice top end for your ramp deck. Doesn't seem broken still. Well, it doesn't have to be broken, right? Landfall got 2 buffed cards. It did. It got 2 buffed cards, and it can play Omnath now as well. Might be worth a shot, man. Omnath, Druid class, Phylath. Because you probably want to play Evolving Wilds, right, in your Omnath deck, and Evolving Wilds plays nice with Phylath too, as does the Druid class. Okay, Demi-Lich. So Demi-Lich is... the text is exactly the same as far as I can see. The cost is the same. It's now a 4/4 rather than a 4/3. I mean, Demi-Lich is already an amazing card. Pretty crazy it's getting a buff, but they're buffing because it doesn't have a deck. Yeah. The main problem for Demi-Lich is like the lack of cards like Opt and stuff, huh? There's not enough cantrips for Demi-Lich. Like it's pretty easy to get Demi-Lich, or not easy, but you can make a deck in Standard that can get Demi-Lich into play, but you kind of slow down significantly after that. It's quite difficult to get it back into play for a second time, huh? That's the problem. And a buff to the stats doesn't change that. But a buff to the stats does mean that it's like it's gonna die a little bit less often, which will mean that you'll have a little bit more time to get to the point where you can bring it out a second time once it's dead. So it should help a little bit. Okay, and now, so I think 63 new cards, right? So these cards are for Alchemy and Historic only. These cards will not be playable in Standard. So IMO. This thing is kind of nutty, no? Have I lost my mind? Or is this thing not, like, quite good? So it's a 3 mana counter, double blue, obviously. Cards in your hand that share a card type with that spell cost 1 less to cast. I don't know, man. That's pretty decent. Absurdly strong? I mean, it's very good, yeah. Only in hand, though? Yeah, only the spells that share your type in hand. I mean, what do you want? You want it to discount your entire deck? Come on, only the cards in your hand, yeah. How about they discount your entire collection perpetually? So, like, how about Absorb Energy costs 2 mana in your next game when you counter an instant? Only 9 games of Absorb Energy and you can have a 1 mana Omniscience. This thing is it's just good, right? Like, it's a good counter spell. It will probably get played. Begin anew. Green, green, white, white sorcery. Destroy all creatures. Creature cards in your hand perpetually get +1/+1. This is a sick card. There isn't a deck that can play this card. Yes, there is. What? How is there not a deck that can play this card? This is a great, like, sideboard card in green-white decks, maybe in Bant. There's plenty of times when you're playing creatures and you want to have a Wrath in the sideboard. Yeah, but Wrath of God is just better. This one is very hard to cast. Well, Wrath of God is not in Alchemy. It's a bit of a pointless comparison. It's legal in Alchemy, yes. So all of these cards that we're about to look at are legal in both Historic and Alchemy, but not Standard. This card is just good, guys. Your decks will play this. I don't know why you think they wouldn't. Okay. Captain Eberhard. This guy is absolutely pog, man. This dude is sick. 2 mana, 1/1, human. Double strike. Spells cast from among cards you drew this turn cost 1 less. Spells cast from among cards your opponent drew this turn cost 1 more. Like, it's pretty good. Nice, nice Phoenix deck with 4 opts, mate. It would be a shame if your next opt cost 2. Sadly, it does not interact with iteration though, because you don't draw the card from iteration. Sad. Yep, this on turn 2 and then top deck Coco is pretty good. So I mean, this guy, there's not too much to say about this guy. He is nutty. You will play him. Forsaken Crossroads. Now this here is an interesting card. It is a land. It enters the battlefield tapped, and you may tap it to add 1 mana of any colour. Or you may tap it to add 1 mana of the colour that you choose. But when it enters the battlefield, scry 1. If you weren't the starting player, you may untap it instead. So it's like really weird, man. So on the draw, it's an untapped any colour land. On the play, it's a tapped any colour land, scry 1. And it's not forced, yeah. So if you've already got like 5 lands in play and you top deck this, you can just leave it tapped and take the scry, right? Which is pretty cool too. And you can even do that on turn 1 if you're on the draw turn 1, you don't have a 1 mana card. Like, seriously guys, do you just play 4 copies of this in the sideboard of every deck? And you just bring it in for the game that you're on the draw? Not worth sideboard slots. I mean, I'll be playing 4 sideboard. I'll be playing 4 of this in my sideboard. Geist Channeler. When it enters the battlefield, choose an instant or sorcery card in your hand with mana value 3 or greater. It perpetually gains this spell cost 2 less to cast. Are there instants and sorceries with mana value 3 or greater with 2 colourless cost? Memory Deluge. Memory Deluge I don't think is your target of choice with this spell. Why don't you guys leave the evaluating to me? I mean, this plus Liar is a bit of a combo, by the way. Divide by 0. Yeah, divide by 0. 1 mana divide by 0, huh? It's good with, like, recursion or flashback, yeah, like Storm the Festival. So you want cards with, like, flashback. You want cards with that you can bring back to hand, these type of things, huh? So you get to double dip on the discount. But they have to have 2 colourless mana. Not good with Deluge. Definitely not good with Deluge, no. Although, I mean, it's not awful with Deluge. It just makes it into a completely different card. Like, if Deluge is your only target for the spell, you're not going to cry about it. It's fine. Unburial Rites? Yeah, it's cool with cards like Unburial Rites, yes. But, again, you're not going to make a Geist Channeler Unburial Rites deck. But that you're along the right lines. Obviously a very strong card, we'll see if it makes it into any decks. Gitrog, Horror of Zava. 4 mana 6/6 menace. At the beginning of each upkeep, if it's untapped, an opponent may sack a creature. If they do, tap it, then seek a land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, it perpetually gains black, green, tap, sack, draw a card. So this dude is just, like, cracked, or am I insane? 4 mana 6/6 menace. Every land you play can be cycled for 2. Seems good. Cool card. I think it's pretty good, yeah. This thing is very hard to remove without a black removal spell. Might need a nerf? Maybe. I don't think this card will get nerfed. Like, this card is either like borderline playable or maybe even unplayable. But it's the type of power level you'd like to see these cards be. This is broken as fuck. It's not broken as fuck, man. It's like, it's okay, it's pretty good. This card might actually not even see any play. But, like, it's could see play. Ishkana Broodmother. So this is the first one that I think is just bad, right? 4 mana 3/5 reach. Other spiders get +1/+2. And then for 2, you can exile 2 cards from your graveyard, and you get to draft a card from this pile. Twin Silk Spider, 3 mana 1/2 reach, make a 1/2. Strider, 5 mana, 4/3 reach, make a 2/1. Broodweaver, 4 mana, 2/4, make a 1/2. Recluse, 3 mana, 2/3 with Mutate. Recluse, 3 mana, 4/2. Hatchery Spider, Mammoth Spider, Netcaster Spider, Sentinel Spider, Snare Spinner, Sporecap Spider, Spidery Grasp, Spider Spawning, Prey Upon, Arachnoform. Yeah, so draft is exile 2 cards from your graveyard, draft a card from the spellbook. This is the spellbook, and you draft is you will get a choice of 3 of these 10 or whatever this is. 4, 7, 10, 15 cards here. You'll get a choice of 3 of these 15, and you take one of those 3. But this card is bad, but it's a good example of the draft mechanic. Ominous Traveler. 2 mana, 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, draft a card from the spellbook. That card perpetually gains. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any colour to cast this spell, and when you cast this spell, return a creature named Ominous Traveler you control to its owner's hand. So 2 mana, 1/1. Enter the battlefield. Get offered 3 of these cards, choose 1. When you cast the card that you select, you bounce your guy back to your hand. What do you get here? You get Dominating Vampire, Vampire Socialite, Stromkirk Blood Thief, Falconwrath Pitfighter, Wolfkin Outcast, Owlpack Piper, Tovolar, Patrician Geist, Shipwreck Sifters, Steelclad Spirit, Erwin Blessed Geist, Archghoul of Thraben, Champion of the Perished, Headless Rider, Blade Stitched Scab. So these are like all the Vow tribes, huh? Zombies, spirits, wolves, and vampires. So everybody following what the card does. 2 mana, 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, you get offered 3 random choices from this pile. You select one, that card goes into your hand. Once you cast that card that you've selected, you bounce your guy. And then you can go again, I guess. Yeah, it would have been nice if it was a shapeshifter, huh? And then you'd be more incentivized to play it in like your vamp deck or your werewolf deck or whatever. So, I'm not gonna lie, card sucks. Patient Zero. 2 mana, 2/2 lifelink zombie. Story Seeker with upside, by the way. Damage isn't removed from creatures your opponents control during the cleanup steps. Good card, man. Just a good card. Explain, please. So, your opponent has a 3/3 creature.
Best
You
content
have
out there.
Patient
Cheers,
Zero
mate.
and another 2/2 in play. You attack with your 2/2 creature that's not Patient Zero. They block your guy. Your guy dies. Their guy is a 3/1 for the rest of the turn, as usual. You pass the turn. Their guy does not become a 3/3 again. It stays as a 3/1. Does that explain it? Nerdiga, actually it's still a 3/3 just with 2 damage counters on it. Okay. Sorry? Yeah, it's quite cool with the decay zombies, huh? Because now your opponent kinda has a choice to make, huh? Do they take the 2 damage from the decay zombie, knowing that it's gonna die anyway? Or do they continue to block with their 3/3 and know that they're not gonna get those stats back? So a good thing about Patient Zero is that if you attack with your decay zombie, they block with their 3/3, it becomes a 3/1, they untap, it remains a 3/3 with 2 damage counters on it, then even if they then remove the Patient Zero, it still stays as a 3/1, right? Like even after Patient Zero is dead? Until the next cleanup step, huh? So until the start of the next turn. Okay. Toralf's Disciple. I don't know who Toralf is, but I am now willing to also be a disciple of his or hers. This is a 3 mana, 3/3 haste. 3 mana, 3/3 haste, okay. That's not quite good enough. You're gonna have to give me some more juice wizards for me to add this card to my deck. What more juice do you have for me? When I attack, conjure 4 cards named Lightning Bolt into my library, then shuffle. But Mr. Streamer, what is a Lightning Bolt? A Lightning Bolt is 1 mana, deal 3 damage to any target. To any target, 1 mana. Alright chat, anybody pogging? I'm pogging out of my fucking mind. Play this game 1, you get bolts for game 2. I don't think so. But I mean, I would love that to be true. That sounds fun. Sounds a little bit too good though. Ecuador! Ecuador!